A woman left for work and forgot to tell her husband that the camera was working again. Then she went to check. Olivia Ward stared at her phone screen, not breathing. The hospital cafeteria buzzed with the usual lunchtime chatter, but she couldn't hear any of it. Her coffee sat untouched, cooling beside the half-eaten sandwich she'd never finish now. Everything in her peripheral vision blurred as she focused on the small rectangle of light in her hand. This can't be happening. On the screen, she watched her husband Reed moving through their living room. He wasn't alone, and he wasn't doing anything she could ever have imagined. She felt her heartbeat in her throat, her ears, behind her eyes. The fluorescent hospital light suddenly seemed too bright. She hit the power button on her phone, plunging the screen to black, but the image remained burned into her mind. Liv? Hey, Earth to Olivia? She looked up to see Jessica, her colleague from pediatrics, sliding into the seat across from her. The moment Jessica saw Olivia's face, her smile disappeared. What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Olivia's mouth opened, but no words came out. How could she possibly explain what she'd just witnessed? How could she put into words something she herself couldn't process? I have to go home, she finally managed, her voice strange and distant to her own ears. I have to leave. But your shift doesn't end for another 4 hours. The Reynolds consultation, cover for me. Olivia stood abruptly, nearly knocking over her chair. Please, Jess. Family emergency. Before Jessica could respond, Olivia was moving, her legs carrying her through the cafeteria on autopilot. Her mind raced with questions, each one more terrifying than the last. Had she really seen what she thought she saw? And if she had, what was she going to do about it? The camera shouldn't even have been working. That was the cruel irony of it all. 3 days ago, it had been as dead as her marriage apparently was. Still nothing? Reed asked from the kitchen doorway, a mug of coffee in his hand. Olivia shook her head, staring at the error message on her phone app. Connection failed. Check camera power and Wi-Fi settings. It was working fine for months, she said, frustration edging her voice. Why would it just stop now? Reed shrugged, taking a casual sip of his coffee. Technology. It's great until it isn't. At 41, Reed Ward still carried himself with the easy confidence that had first attracted Olivia to him 13 years ago. His dark hair had started to gray at the temples, but it only made him look more distinguished. His tech company had done well enough that he could work from home most days, designing software systems that, as he often joked, kept the lights on and paid for the good wine. I'll call the security company after my shift, Olivia said, sliding her phone into her bag. I don't like not having eyes on the house when we're both gone. Is that really necessary? It's been down before? They always charge a fortune for these service calls. After what happened to the Morgans, yes, it's necessary. She looked at him pointedly, referencing their neighbor's break-in the previous month. Besides, we're paying for the monitoring service anyway. Reed sighed, relenting. Fine, whatever makes you feel safer. That had been their dynamic lately, her expressing concern, him dismissing it, then reluctantly agreeing after she pushed. It hadn't always been this way. Once, they'd been partners in everything, faced the world as a united front. But sometime in the past year or two, a distance had grown between them. Small at first, almost imperceptible, then widening into something neither acknowledged aloud. They moved around each other in their morning routine with practiced efficiency, speaking little. She watched him check his watch, a gesture he'd been making more frequently these past few months. Got a busy day? She asked. He nodded, distracted. 2 client calls and that system architecture I've been working on. You? Back-to-back patients until 3, then administrative meetings until 6. She gathered her things, kissed his cheek, a habit more than anything else, and headed for the door. Don't forget we have dinner with Vince and Amara tomorrow. Right, he said, though his tone suggested he had forgotten. Dinner. Got it. As Olivia drove to the hospital where she worked as a pediatric specialist, she tried to ignore the nagging feeling that had become her constant companion. Something was off with Reed, had been for months now. He was present but distant, going through the motions of their marriage without actually being in it. When she'd tried to bring it up, he'd blamed work stress, insomnia, the general malaise of middle age. Reasonable explanations, all of them. So why didn't she believe him? The technician came the next afternoon, a Wednesday, while both of them were home. Reed had been locked away in his home office on a video call, while Olivia had taken a rare half-day to be there for the appointment. The problem was simple enough: a loose connection and a firmware update needed. The technician, a young woman named Kira with bright blue hair and multiple ear piercings, had it fixed in 20 minutes. "You're all set, Dr. Ward," she said, packing up her tools. "I've reset the system and upgraded the software. The image quality should actually be better now." "Thank you," Olivia said, walking her to the door. "Is there anything special we need to do to make sure it keeps working?" "Nope. It'll automatically connect to your Wi-Fi. The app might ask you to accept the new terms of service next time you log in, but other than that, you're good to go." After Kira left, Olivia checked the app. Sure enough, the camera was working, showing a crystal-clear view of their living room, kitchen doorway, and the front entrance. She felt a sense of relief seeing the familiar spaces of her home securely monitored again. Reed emerged from his office as she was putting her phone away. "All fixed?" he asked. Yes, it was just a loose connection and needed an update. He nodded absently. "Good. Listen, I need to run to the office. Something came up with the Miller account that I need to handle in person." "Now? I thought we could have lunch together since I'm actually home for once." "I know. I'm sorry." "Rain check?" He was already grabbing his keys and laptop bag. "Shouldn't take more than a couple of hours." She wanted to protest, to point out that they barely spent any time together anymore. But what was the point? This was their pattern now. "Sure, rain check." He kissed her cheek and was gone, leaving her standing in their living room, watched by the newly functioning camera she'd already forgotten to mention. Thursday morning arrived with the promise of early autumn, the air crisp and clean after overnight rain. Olivia woke before her alarm, finding Reed's side of the bed already empty. She heard the shower running in their ensuite bathroom. She lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, mentally organizing her day. 2 new patient consults, a follow-up with the Peterson twins, lunch with her department head to discuss the upcoming research grant, and then meetings until end of day. Standard Thursday. She picked up her phone to check her emails and noticed a notification from the security system app. Motion detected, living room 342 that was odd. She opened the app and navigated to the recorded clips. But before she could watch anything, Reed emerged from the bathroom, a towel wrapped around his waist. "You're up early," he said. Moving to the dresser, she locked her phone, the notification forgotten. "Just getting a head start. Big day. Me too." He pulled out clothes with purpose. "I've got that meeting with potential investors. Then I'm having lunch with Vince to prep for dinner tonight." Vince Russo had been Reed's friend since college. He'd married Amara 4 years ago, and the couples tried to get together regularly, though it had been happening less frequently lately. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration of Vince and Amara's anniversary. "You're having lunch with Vince?" This was the first she'd heard of it. "I thought he was out of town until today. Got back yesterday. He called last night while you were in the shower." Reed pulled on a crisp blue button-down shirt, one of his investor meeting shirts, as she thought of them. "Wants to go over some business idea he has. You know how he gets?" "Right." Olivia got out of bed and headed for the bathroom. "What time are reservations tonight?" 7:30. Amara wanted to try that new place on Hawthorne. Olivia showered quickly, her mind already shifting into work mode. By the time she emerged, Reed was downstairs making coffee. Their morning routine proceeded as usual. Him at the island scrolling through news on his tablet. Her gathering her lunch and paperwork for the day. "I might be a few minutes late tonight," she said, pouring coffee into her travel mug. "Depends on how long the Meyer consultation runs." "No problem. I'll text you if anything changes on my end," she nodded, gathering her things. As she was about to leave, Reed's phone chimed with a text. He glanced at it, then quickly put the phone face down on the counter. A small gesture, but it caught her attention. She'd noticed him doing that more lately. shielding his screen, taking calls in another room, being vague about who was contacting him. In the early days of their relationship, they'd had an open phone policy. Not that they snooped on each other, but there was a transparency that had made her feel secure. When had that changed? The thought lingered as she kissed him goodbye, a quick peck that neither of them leaned into. "Good luck with the investors. Thanks. Have a good day." And then she was out the door, headed for her car, completely forgetting to mention that the security camera was functioning again. It wasn't an intentional omission, just one of those minor details lost in the shuffle of a busy morning. She had no way of knowing how significant that forgotten detail would become. Olivia's morning at the hospital passed in a blur of patient consultations and paperwork. By noon, she was running behind schedule. Her lunch meeting with the department head pushed back 15 minutes. She used the unexpected break to catch up on emails in the quiet of her office. As she was responding to a colleague about an upcoming conference, her phone lit up with a notification. "Motion detected. Living room, 11:47 a.m. She paused, finger hovering over the alert. Reed should be at his investor meeting, not at home. Maybe the cleaners had come early? But no, they weren't scheduled until Monday. Curious, she opened the app. The camera interface loaded, showing a live feed of their empty living room. Nothing seemed out of place. She tapped on the recorded clip from the notification. The footage showed Reed entering the living room, checking his watch. He paced nervously, then moved toward the front window, peering out as if waiting for someone. Moments later, the doorbell rang, and he quickly went to answer it. Reed returned to view with a woman Olivia had never seen before. She was tall and slim, with long dark hair, dressed in sleek business attire. They stood talking in the living room, their body language intense but not intimate. There was no audio on the feed, but Olivia could see that whatever they were discussing was serious. Reed ran his hands through his hair, a gesture he made when stressed, while the woman checked her phone repeatedly. After a few minutes, Reed left the frame, returning with what looked like a folder, which he handed to the woman. She opened it, examined the contents, then nodded. What struck Olivia wasn't just their interaction, but how different Reed looked. His entire demeanor had changed, alert, engaged, almost vibrating with tension. It was a stark contrast to the distracted, detached husband she'd been living with. The woman put the folder in her bag, then checked her watch. Reed nodded and led her out of view, presumably to the front door. When he returned to the living room alone, he stood still for a moment, then took out his phone and made a call. After speaking briefly, he grabbed his keys and left. The clip ended, leaving Olivia staring at the live feed of her empty home. Who was that woman? Why had Reed lied about being at an investor meeting? What was in the folder? Her initial instinct was to call him immediately and demand answers, but something stopped her. This wasn't the first time she'd felt that Reed wasn't being entirely truthful lately. If she confronted him now, would she get the real story or just another convenient explanation? Before she could decide what to do, her phone rang, her department head, waiting for their lunch meeting. Olivia took a deep breath, trying to compartmentalize. She would have to deal with this later. Throughout her afternoon meetings, her mind kept returning to the footage. By 3 o'clock, she couldn't focus on anything else. She excused herself from a budget discussion, claiming she needed to check on a patient, and retreated to a quiet corner of the hospital cafeteria. Once seated with a coffee she didn't want, she opened the security app again. There were 2 more alerts since the one she'd viewed. Motion detected, living room. 12:30 p.m. and motion detected, living room, p.m. The 12:30 clip showed Reed returning home, making another phone call, then leaving again quickly. Nothing unusual, except that he was supposed to be at meetings all day. Olivia's finger hovered over the 2:15 alert. Part of her didn't want to know, wanted to preserve the possibility that there was an innocent explanation for everything. But the larger part, the part that had sensed something was wrong for months now, needed to see. She tapped the clip. The footage started with Reed entering the living room, but this time he wasn't alone. Vince was with him, along with another man Olivia didn't recognize. The third man was tall and imposing, with a shaved head and an expensive-looking suit. His presence seemed to fill the room, and both Reed and Vince appeared tense around him. They stood talking in the living room. At one point, the third man gestured emphatically, causing Reed to step back slightly. Vince placed a hand on Reed's shoulder, as if steadying him or offering support. The interaction wasn't friendly. It looked like a confrontation. After several minutes, Reed disappeared from view, returning with another folder similar to the one he'd given the woman earlier. The bald man took it, examined the contents briefly, then said something that made Vince visibly relax. Reed, however, remained tense. The man put the folder inside his suit jacket, shook hands with both Reed and Vince, and then left. Once he was gone, Reed collapsed onto the sofa, head in his hands. Vince sat beside him, speaking intensely. Reed nodded several times, then stood up abruptly and began pacing. After another minute of conversation, they both left together. The clip ended, leaving Olivia staring at the screen in shock. None of this aligned with what Reed had told her. He was supposed to be at an investor meeting, then having lunch with Vince to discuss some business idea. Instead, they were at her house, having what looked like a tense exchange with a menacing stranger. And earlier, Reed had met with a woman she'd never seen before, giving her what appeared to be documents of some kind. What was he involved in? Was he in trouble? Was it an affair? Business problems? Something worse? Olivia sat frozen, her mind racing through possibilities. The Reed she knew, or thought she knew, was straightforward, ethical, even a bit risk-averse. The man in these videos seemed like a stranger, engaged in something secretive and possibly dangerous. She checked the time. Nearly 3:30. She still had patients to see, consultations to finish. But how could she focus on work when her entire personal life seemed to be unraveling? Making a sudden decision, she packed up her things and headed for the administration office. 10 minutes later, she had arranged for her remaining appointments to be covered by colleagues, citing a family emergency. As she drove home, her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. What would she find there? What would she say to Reed when she saw him? The security app chimed with another alert as she was stopped at a red light. Motion detected. Living room, 3:42 p.m. Heart pounding, she pulled into a parking lot and opened the clip. This time, the footage showed Reed alone, moving purposefully around the living room. He appeared to be gathering items, his laptop, some papers from the desk in the corner, a small lockbox they kept in the bookshelf. He placed everything in his work bag, then made a phone call. The conversation was brief. After hanging up, he stood in the center of the room, looking around as if seeing it for the last time. Then he walked out of frame, and the clip ended. Olivia sat in her car, feeling as if the ground had disappeared beneath her. The methodical way Reed had collected those specific items, that final surveying look around the room, it looked like someone preparing to leave. Was he planning to abandon her? Was he in danger? Running from something or someone? She tried calling his cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. She tried again with the same result. The drive home took 20 minutes, each second stretching into an eternity of questions without answers. When she finally pulled into their driveway, Reed's car wasn't there. The house was silent when she entered, the familiar spaces suddenly strange and threatening. She moved through the rooms, looking for any sign of what might be happening, for any clue Reed might have left. In their bedroom, she went straight to his dresser. The top 2 drawers were half empty, his favorite clothes gone. In the closet, spaces gaped where suits and shoes had been. His toiletries were missing from the bathroom. Back downstairs, she noticed other absences. The small safe from his office was gone, along with his backup hard drives and the folder where they kept their passports. She sank onto the sofa, the same spot where hours earlier she'd watched Reed put his head in his hands. The evidence was clear. Her husband had packed and left. But why? And where had he gone? Her phone rang, startling her. Jessica from the hospital. She let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a text appeared. Everything okay? You left in a hurry. How could she possibly respond to that? Nothing was okay. Her life had imploded in the space of an afternoon. As she sat there, trying to process what was happening, her phone chimed with another security alert. Motion detected. Living room, 4:38 p.m. With trembling fingers, she opened the app, watching in real time as the front door opened. Reed stepped into the living room and froze when he saw Olivia sitting on the sofa. For a long moment, they stared at each other, the air between them thick with unspoken accusations. "You're home early," he finally said, his voice carefully neutral. Olivia held up her phone, the security app still open. "So are you." "Investor meeting run short?" His eyes flicked to her phone, then back to her face. Something shifted in his expression. Resignation, perhaps, or relief. "How long have you been watching?" "Long enough." She stood up, anger suddenly replacing her shock. "Who's the woman you met with this morning? And why were you and Vince meeting with that man who looked like he belonged in a mob movie? What's in those folders you keep handing out? And why—" Her voice broke. "Why are your things packed and gone?" Reed set down his bag and ran his hands through his hair. "Liv, I can explain. Can you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like my husband is involved in something illegal and was planning to disappear without so much as a goodbye. It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" "Because I've been watching you withdraw from our marriage for months, making excuses, hiding your phone, staying late at an office you supposedly don't need to go to anymore. And now this?" She gestured at his bag. "Were you even going to tell me? Or just leave a note?" Reed moved to sit in the armchair across from her. "I was going to tell you tonight after dinner with Vince and Amara. I just needed to get some things in order first." "Tell me what exactly?" He looked at her directly for what felt like the first time in months. "That I'm in trouble. Serious trouble. And that it might be safer for you if I wasn't here." "What kind of trouble?" The anger in her voice was now tinged with fear. Reed took a deep breath. "About 8 months ago, I made some bad decisions with the company. We were struggling after losing the Hartman contract, and I was desperate to keep things afloat. Vince introduced me to someone, an investor named Garrett Donovan." He paused. "Except he wasn't really an investor. Who was he? A fixer for people who need certain problems to disappear. He offered me a deal. He'd solve our cash flow issues in exchange for using our software platform for some of his clients. I didn't ask enough questions. I just saw a solution to our financial problems." Olivia felt cold dread spreading through her. "What kind of clients?" "The kind that don't want their transactions traced." Reed's voice was hollow. "Money laundering, Liv? He was using our system to move money for people who needed their funds cleaned. By the time I realized the full extent of it, we were already compromised. Our legitimate business was just a front." "The man in the video today, was that him? This Garrett person?" Reed nodded. "He's been increasing his demands, wanting more access, more control. When I tried to back out, he made it clear that wasn't an option. Said he had enough to implicate me in everything." He gestured toward the front of the house. "There's a car that's been parked down the street for the past week. Same guys, different shifts. They're watching us. And the woman this morning? Maya Chen. She's a federal investigator." Reed's voice dropped. "I've been working with her for the past month, gathering evidence against Donovan's operation." Olivia stared at him in disbelief. "You're an informant? Against a money launderer?" "It was the only way out that didn't end with me in prison for 20 years. He leaned forward. "I didn't tell you because I needed to protect you. If Donovan suspected you knew anything, you'd be in danger too. So all these months of distance, of lying about where you were going, who you were with. I was trying to keep you safe," Reed insisted. "And I was ashamed, Liv. I made a terrible mistake that put everything we have at risk." "How could I tell you that?" Olivia stood up, needing to move to process. "And now you're what? Running away? Entering witness protection?" "Not exactly. The FBI is moving in on Donovan's operation tonight. Maya came this morning to give me the final details. The meeting with Donovan and Vince was to maintain the illusion that everything was normal while giving them the last piece of evidence they needed." "Vince is involved in this too?" only as a middleman initially. He didn't know what Donovan was really doing either at first. When we figured it out, he agreed to help me work with the feds. Reed stood as well, moving cautiously toward her. I was packing a go bag in case things go wrong. The FBI has a safe house ready if Donovan suspects anything before they can arrest him. And you were just going to disappear? Without telling me? I was going to tell you tonight. Ask you to come with me if it became necessary. His eyes pleaded with her. I know how this looks, Liv. I know I've been distant and secretive. But everything I did was to fix my mistake and keep you safe. Olivia felt tears threatening. You should have told me. We're supposed to be partners. I know. I was wrong. He took another step toward her. But I'm telling you everything now. Before she could respond, his phone rang. He pulled it from his pocket, glancing at the screen. It's Maya, he answered, listening intently. Now? But it wasn't supposed to. Yes, I understand. We'll be ready. He hung up, his face grave. What is it? Olivia asked, alarmed by his expression. They're moving on Donovan now. Something spooked him. He's trying to transfer everything offshore and run. The FBI is on their way here, too. He looked at her with urgency. Olivia, I need you to decide right now. Do you trust me enough to come with me to the safe house until this is over? Or would you rather stay with your sister until I can contact you? Olivia stared at him, her mind racing. In the space of a day, her entire reality had shifted. Her husband wasn't having an affair. He was caught in a federal investigation against a money launderer who might want him dead. The distant, distracted man she'd been living with wasn't falling out of love with her. He was drowning in a situation of his own making, trying to shield her from the consequences. Part of her was furious that he hadn't trusted her enough to tell her the truth from the beginning. Another part understood his misguided attempt to protect her, and beneath it all was the stark reality that whatever happened next, their life together would never be the same. How long? She asked. What? How long at this safe house? How long until it's over? A few days, maybe a week? Just until they've rounded up everyone connected to Donovan. He picked up his bag. Liv, we don't have much time. She thought of the hospital, her patients, the life they'd built. She thought of the stranger she'd been living with these past months, and the man standing before her now, finally honest, finally present. I need to pack a bag, she said. Relief washed over Reed's face. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, she warned. This isn't forgiveness. It's just practical. We'll have plenty of time to figure out what this means for us later. As she moved toward the stairs, Reed caught her arm gently. Liv, I am so sorry. For all of it. When this is over, if you'll let me, I want to make this right. She looked at him. Really looked at him. For the first time in months. The man she'd married was still there, beneath the deception and fear. Whether that was enough to rebuild what they'd lost remained to be seen. Pack what you need, he urged. I'll watch for Maya's signal. Upstairs, Olivia moved automatically, filling a bag with essentials. Her mind kept returning to the security camera footage, the catalyst for this revelation. If she hadn't checked it today, would Reed have told her the truth tonight as he claimed? Or would she have come home to an empty house and a note, left to wonder what had happened to the life she thought they shared? The camera that was supposed to make her feel safe had instead revealed how precarious their safety really was. The irony wasn't lost on her. When she returned downstairs, Reed was by the window, phone in hand. Car just pulled up, he said. Maya's here. Olivia took one last look around their home, the space where they'd built their life together, now tainted by deception and danger. Whatever happened next, nothing would be the same. The thought was both terrifying and, in a strange way, liberating. I'm ready, she said, though she wasn't sure if that was true. How could anyone be ready for their life to implode? Reed turned to her, vulnerability naked on his face. Whatever happens, Liv, I want you to know. The one thing I never lied about was loving you. She nodded, unable to respond. Later, there would be time for recriminations, for healing, for decisions about their future. For now, all she could do was follow him out the door and into uncertainty. As they stepped outside, the security camera captured their departure, 2 people leaving a life behind, heading toward an unknown future. Together for now, but with nothing guaranteed, the footage would remain there, evidence of the day everything changed, waiting for someone to check it, but no one ever would. 6 months later. Olivia stood at the window of their new apartment, watching snow fall on an unfamiliar street. Downtown Chicago looked nothing like Portland, but after half a year, she was finally starting to think of it as home. Behind her, Reed was unpacking the last of their boxes, what little they'd been able to retrieve from their old life. Most of their possessions had been sold or put in storage. Their identities hadn't changed. Donovan wasn't important enough for that level of protection, but the FBI had strongly suggested relocating once the case was closed. "What do you think about this spot for the photo?" Reed asked, holding up their wedding picture, one of the few personal items they'd brought with them. Olivia turned from the window. "Maybe by the bookshelf instead." He nodded, moving to place it there. "Better?" Yes. Their conversation still had this careful quality, measured, deliberate, as if testing uncertain ground. The past 6 months had been a process of painful reconstruction. After the initial shock and anger had subsided, they'd begun the slow work of rebuilding trust. Donovan and his network had been arrested the night they left their home. Reed had testified, providing evidence that helped secure convictions. His own involvement had been treated leniently in exchange for his cooperation, resulting in probation rather than prison time. His company was gone, but he'd found work with a tech firm in Chicago, starting over from the ground up. Olivia had transferred to a children's hospital in the city, her credentials fortunately making the transition smoother than it might have been. The work anchored her during those first tumultuous months when everything else felt unsteady. They'd tried therapy, separately at first, then together. The counselor had helped them navigate the aftermath, giving them tools to process the betrayal, secrecy, and fear that had nearly destroyed their marriage. "I was thinking," Reed said, breaking into her thoughts, "maybe we could try that Italian place down the street tonight? Celebrate getting the last box unpacked." Olivia smiled slightly. "That sounds nice." He came to stand beside her at the window, careful to maintain a small distance. Another change. The physical ease they once shared was still returning gradually. "Are you happy here?" he asked quietly. It was a question he asked often these days, always watching her face closely for the truth in her answer. "I'm getting there," she replied honestly. "It's not where I expected to be, but I can see a future here." "With me?" The vulnerability in his voice was something new, or perhaps something rediscovered. The ordeal had stripped away the protective layers they'd both built up over the years. Olivia turned to face him fully. "Yes, Reed, with you." He reached for her hand and she let him take it. This, too, was part of their new normal, relearning each other, rebuilding connection deliberately rather than assuming it. "I was so afraid I'd lost you," he admitted. "That day when I came home and saw you sitting there with the security app open, I thought it was the end." "So did I." She squeezed his hand. "Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't checked that camera footage. If I hadn't forgotten to tell you it was working again." "I would have told you everything that night," he insisted, as he had many times before. Maybe. She wasn't sure she'd ever fully believe that, but she'd chosen to move forward without certainty. Either way, that camera changed everything. For the better, I hope. Eventually. She nodded slowly. "I think so. Painful as it was. At least now there are no more secrets between us." They stood together watching the snow, hand in hand in their new home. The path that had brought them here was not one they would have chosen, filled with fear, deception, and betrayal. But standing on the other side of it, Olivia could see that the foundation they were rebuilding might ultimately be stronger than what came before. The security camera that had revealed the truth was gone now, left behind with their old life. They didn't need it anymore. Whatever happened next, they would face it with eyes wide open, together.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.